Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. Welcome to Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Tuesday morning, April the 5th, and 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And I'm glad to be here this morning. Glad that you can be here. And I have a good friend in the chat room here, Bill Murray. And it's great to be able to do these shows. And I appreciate everybody who's tuning in and catching the shows and catching the archives. It's just awesome. I have almost 23,600 shows listened to. So that's a lot of shows. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. So this morning I wanted to continue talking about dysfunctional families when you grow up in a dysfunctional family by George A. Boyd. And this is from the Midrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies. And that's www.midrashram.com. We're finishing up this article. We've been on this for quite a while now. But it's a great article, and I think it really brings to light the issues that many people may have had to deal with growing up in a dysfunctional family. May not even been abusive, but it might have been dysfunctional. And there's he really goes on to explain, healthy families, but the difference between healthy families and dysfunctional families, the roles that people might play and take on in these families, within these families, and boundary issues and all kinds of good stuff, looking at the whole self-damage self. And so I think this article is really worth taking a look at, even though it's a little bit older. It's still good information. So thanks everybody for being here. We're almost done. We're getting down to the end of the article. And so I'm going to just scroll down there right now. I did pop that into the chat room there, and for anybody who would like to take a peek at it, it's really good stuff. And I appreciate everybody who's tuning in. I hope y'all had a nice evening. I know last night I was on Bill Murray's show, and that Stop Child Abuse Now, SCAM, and that's here on Blog Talk Radio, www.blogtalkradio.com/Bill, BILL, -Murray, MURRAY. And that's a great show, and I hope everybody will tune in. It's, it's kind of like we're sort of the same, along the same lines. We're sort of trying to do the same thing, and that is to get the information out regarding the issues surrounding child abuse, the fact that it's an epidemic, and as well, Bill Murray and all the people that work with him are also part of and really heading up the NAASCA.org. That's the National Association for Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. And so, just awesome, just another voice out here. I really enjoyed the show last night. It was an interview, and it was an hour long, and we got to talk to Jessica and another guest, Thunder, that had come on. And there was quite a few people in the chat room, and it was just awesome to be a part of that. So I thank you, Bill, very much for that. And it's just amazing to be able to be a voice. There are lots and lots of voices for people. If you're listening to this show and you're thinking, I don't know, who to talk to, how I can get help. Well, there's lots and lots of great places you can get help. If you are looking to begin your healing journey, and you're looking, then you feel like you're ready to to sort of search out and seek out, someone to talk to and get into a group support thing. The NAASCA is another route a person can go. You can get involved, and you can find support. That's the thing. I used to belong to a group, adult survivor group, a while back, almost about 2 years ago, and it was great. It was good to be able to have that support, and from people who knew what I had been through it. Because all of our stories are different. We've all been through different things, even though we might be able to say, okay, we share the commonality of being abused as children in some way by someone. Our stories would all be different, and so, but you still, we all know what it's like to suffer. We all know what it's like to be in that pain, and to be, carrying whatever kind of shame or guilt or anger or sadness, grief, because of the abuse, right? And so it was great to have validation, and really awesome to find people who knew where I was coming from, knew what I was experiencing, and they're very helpful, in saying, look, you can do this, we can do this together. And I think it's important for people to find somebody, to talk to, right? So I'm not a counselor or therapist, just so everybody knows. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows, and I wanted to just be one more voice out here speaking out about child abuse, bringing awareness and education regarding the issues surrounding child abuse and adult survivor issues. And I'm on my healing journey, right? So this morning show really is my healing journey. And so you have to listen at your own discretion, because I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a very sensitive subject. So if you're not, if you think that the topics of abuse or violence or anything like that might bother you, you do need to turn the show off. And young people, I just ask that you have the permission to listen to my show, anybody under the age of 18. And that's because I believe in protecting children at all times. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And we're standing up to fight to save children's lives and to promote protection of children. And so you need to know how to keep yourself safe online. So if you're listening and you're under the age of 18, have someone who's older listen to the show with you, and then they can help you make the decision whether you should be listening or not. So thanks, everybody. We're going to get right into this topic here, dysfunctional families. We left off yesterday talking about the whole self-damaged self, and we were talking about they have difficulties with intimacy, forming close relationships, and dread letting go of a relationship even when it is destructive. They report sexual dysfunction, sexual obsession, or lack of sexual desire, and that's what we were talking about yesterday. So we'll move on to the next one. They may be troubled with health problems that derive from too much stress, failure to properly care for their nutrition or get proper exercise or sleep, and being overly driven in their lives, not knowing when to let go or relax. And this is for people, they're mainly talking about people who've grown up in dysfunctional families, right? But I know for people who have been abused, this is also another huge issue. I know for myself and other people that I've talked to, many health problems can exist because of growing up in a background where there may have been neglect, there may have been, physical abuse, and even, emotional, psychological abuse will take its toll on a person's body. And, the stress of growing up around a lot of violence, around a lot of abuse within the home, it causes a lot of damage to the body, because you're always in a sense of heightened alert, so adrenaline and whatnot will run through the body. Adrenaline is sort of it occurs in the body when we become upset, or when it's a fight or flight situation, and we feel that our lives are being threatened, or we're in danger. It's a warning signal for us, and it creates this chemical. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, right? But I've just done a little bit of looking into it, and adrenaline will rush through the body when we're upset, and really at a heightened state of alertness, And if you grow up around a lot of violence, a lot of destructive rages or violence, or people abusing someone, that adrenaline will race through the body. If it does it all the time, it kind of acts like a poison. You know what I mean? Because it's not a healthy thing for a person to be staying at a state like that all the time. And I know when I was a young kid, it was especially being abused physically. The adrenaline would just race through my body. If I was, my mom was starting to slap me around or beat on me, the adrenaline just runs through your body. And, the heart's pumping and all this it's really harsh on a child's body for a child to have to spend a lot of time in that state of, fight or flight, right? So it's absolutely horrific what this does. I know, so there's this issue, as well as just being physically abused, but also the stress of being psychologically abused or emotionally abused. It's really hard on a person. It takes its toll on the body. So many people who have lived and grown up in abusive environments of any type, even people who are just in domestic violence situations, maybe never were abused as children, it's the same thing. It's incredibly hard on your health and the stress of it. And failure to properly care for their nutrition or get proper exercise or sleep is a huge issue for a lot of people, whether they were abused or not. But I know that people who were, who maybe have suffered a lot of abuse may not know even how to properly take care of themselves. I know that we were not shown as children how to take care of ourselves because our parents weren't taking care of themselves. And so they were supposed to be our number one example. So, my mother never took care of herself, and she was being abused by my dad, and she would stay up all night and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes all night because she didn't want to go to sleep, because he was always trying to attack her and to rape her, marital rape, right? So she would be staying up all night. She wouldn't be sleeping properly. She was just exhausted from popping out all these kids that she didn't want, and this hugely, highly volatile, abusive marriage. And it took its toll on my mother's, health. And, she didn't encourage any of us to take care of ourselves and actually allowed my brothers to use drugs. And people would say, well, what could she have done? Well, the issue is this was back in the 1960s and, the hippie days and whatnot. And, lots of people were using drugs. Lots of young people were using drugs around that time. And even today people still do. But, she was just like, I think it's not that she didn't care and didn't want to see her sons dead from drug overdoses or anything like that, but she didn't know how to get them any help. She couldn't help herself. She couldn't help her children. And, it was absolutely horrific, we were just not shown how to take care of ourselves. And another issue for people who may have, been abused or living in, dysfunctional families is that they may be overly driven in their lives, not knowing when to let go or relax. And that's this whole idea of, if I can stay busy, I can focus on something else and not think about my past or not think about what I need to work on myself. Because a lot of times, that's my particular situation anyway. I know that's one of the reasons why I stay extremely busy, I'm sure. It's because I don't have to then deal with the real stuff that's going on, because that stuff is just, I just don't want to deal with it, you know what I mean? So I'll stay incredibly busy in that way. I don't have to deal with this stuff, mainly health issues. And, we do need to learn how to take care of ourselves if we really didn't get, weren't shown some good examples of that as children. It's important if we want to stick around. And that's the thing, I have, my sweetheart's always telling me, oh, you'll never go to the doctor, because I never do. And I had to, years ago when I lost my baby, I had to go to the hospital. And at that point I did have a checkup and whatnot, and this was quite a few years ago now. And, for me, going to the hospital, I just don't go because, as growing up abused, we were not taken to the hospital, we were not taken to the doctor, we were just abused and allowed to just live in this abuse, and whether we were hurt or not, we were just left to suffer at our own, at our own demise. And I really never wanted, I'm not sure, it could stem from having the social workers check me over. I think that when I was a little kid, we had social workers coming in the home for quite a while who were making regular visits to make sure that we were not being abused by my siblings and myself. And I remember these people would check me over and give me a bit of an examination, looking for bruises, looking for signs of sexual abuse, looking for, for any side of abuse, right? So I would have to remove my clothing. And being abused as a child, I think many of us don't want people touching our bodies, you know what I mean? Like, I know myself, I'm not so bad anymore, but I had such a huge issue with people touching my body that I don't even want a doctor to touch my body, right? Even somebody who I think would, who should be trustworthy and is doing that because it's a job to try to keep you alive. It's the whole idea that I just don't want people touching me. I just have a real problem with that, and that's from being sexually abused, and it's also from being physically abused. And people, you learn at a very young age these behaviors. And we're talking going back to, childhood, like young childhood, right? Where, there was no way I could protect myself from the abuse. And, so as an adult, I sort of shut down and made the choice that I didn't want anybody touching me. And so it's kind of hard to overcome that, you know what I mean? Because I know I've had examinations in the past and have had checkups and things. But there's things that I need to take care of in my health today that I really don't want to do because it's just this whole idea that I just don't want anybody touching my body. And so the less I can deal with that, the more comfortable I am, right? And sadly enough, it puts my health at stake because there are lots of things I need to go have checked out, lots, health-wise. And so, it's an issue for many people. And I think we do need to try the best we can to take care of ourselves, and realize we only have this one body, and we'll only have this one life here on this earth, as far as we know. And so, we do have to try to take care of ourselves. Like, I have a good example as far as my sweetheart goes, because he goes to his doctor's appointments regularly, but he was not abused as a child. He has no problem going and letting these people take care of him. He's terminally ill, so he has to, in order to stay alive. But the thing is he's really good about keeping his appointments. He doesn't have a problem with doctors. He doesn't have a problem with taking care of things that need to be taken care of. And he just looks at me and he's just like, you won't go unless you get taken in by ambulance. And I'm like, pretty much, that's about right. Because, I got dragged into the hospital by an ambulance when I was 18 years old from a car wreck that I had that was horrific. And, they were doing the x-rays and they spotted some of the old abuse, and they actually called me on it, and they said, you were either really clumsy or you were abused as a child, because you have some serious issues, that, probably stemmed from abuse. And I said, well, yeah, so it was, it could be some clumsiness, and yes, there was some abuse. So, it's embarrassing for me to go to the doctor. You know what I mean? I just really don't want to go. So, but I'm going to have to change that attitude, because I'm getting older, and the body does need help, and it does tend to need more care as we get older, right? And so, I know I'm facing this because of my age, in my mid 40s, and I know that eventually I'm going to have to go, but I don't want to go. But I'm talking myself through this, I'm like working on it every day, right? So we have to know to get help, and get, take care of ourselves, right? And it's very hard for people who are not shown a good example of how to do that. If it becomes part of your life just to follow this, this road of whatever we lived in as a child and lived in for most of our life, right? So we can change these things, and I think it has to be done piece by piece. Obviously this stuff just doesn't happen overnight, but we can start to change our minds on some of this stuff. It's like me, I'm trying to quit smoking. I've been smoking since I was like 12 years old, right? I've been smoking for a long time, so it's just something that I do, right? And it's hard for me I quit for over a year and was fine with it, and then started up because I was stressed out. So this is the thing, it's my security blanket. But I know that I need to quit, because I can't afford them anyway. And they're just not good for me, and they're like they're a drug. They're a toxic drug. They're horrible, and but yet it's my security blanket. So I'm like, well, and so we can change our minds about things. We can get help, and we can learn to change our mind about some of this stuff so that we can help ourselves, to have a better life. I got off drugs, right? At the age of 21, I quit drugs, which was a good thing, right? I actually was able to do that. I didn't want to end up like my brother, who had killed himself. He was a cocaine addict, and he was a manic depressive, and he had so many problems. He was the one that my dad had beaten up and had. My dad really had it in for my brother. I talk about this a lot, and he, for some reason, he did pick on my brother Rob, and my brother Rob, he was the one that showed up at school with the bruises, and actually that's why the social workers got involved, because my dad had beaten up my brother Rob pretty badly. But he was always beating up my brother Rob. For some reason, he felt like he was probably the weak one in the family, and he could manipulate him and twist him, which is what he did. And I watched this degradation, this destruction of my brother the whole time I was growing up. So I know how he was treated. I know how my dad treated him on a daily basis. It was absolutely horrific. And so years later, my brother's a cocaine addict. At the age of 33, kills himself. But he didn't, it wasn't the one time that he tried to kill himself. He had been trying to kill himself since he was in his 20s. And he finally made it at the age of 33 after several suicide attempts. And so, and we all knew he was a cocaine addict, right? So it was pretty bad lifestyle for him. And, I was headed the same way. I thought, man, I'm going to end up in the gutter. I was doing a lot of heavy-duty drugs, and not small amounts and small quantities. I was doing as many drugs as I could possibly get my hands on, and I was still working. I used to work 3 jobs so I could pay for my drugs, and I was doing a lot of drugs. I was, not sleeping. I would get 3 hours of sleep, sometimes 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, and I would be up. I would be high, and then, I'd come down, sleep for a couple hours, and back up, and I'd be high, and that's how I lived my life for many years, pretty much from the age of 12 on, because I started using drugs at the age of 12. And so at the age of 21, I knew that it was taking a toll on my body, it was taking a toll on my mind, and really I was just, people say, were you just trying to escape the abuse by taking all those drugs? Or really what I was doing was, for a long time, I was actually saying, I'll destroy my body before I allow my parents to destroy my body. I thought, if my parents are going to destroy my body, I'll show you I could do a much better job myself. And so I didn't take good care of myself, and I just allowed myself to be in bad shape. And by the time I was 21, I realized I didn't want to end up like my brother, dead from a suicide or overdose. Or one of my other brothers was also always overdosing and ending up in the hospital because of his overdoses, absolutely horrific. And so 2 of my brothers were really died because of the drug use and also basically a slow death, suicide. You know what I mean? So I was headed that road. I could see it, and I, at the age 21, decided to get off the drugs. So we do have to, we can make these changes, but we have to really want it, and we have to see, that it's doable. You know what I mean? I was able to get off the drugs by myself, but what I did was I had to cut off all my friends, which was kind of sad. But I had to let go of that lifestyle, and in order to let go of that lifestyle, I had to give up my friends. And my friends, I loved them so much. They were with me for the whole time I was being abused as a teenager. They were they grew up in many of them in abusive homes like myself, and we relied on each other. You know what I mean? But it was quite violent, and because of the drug use, there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of criminal behavior, criminal activity, and I had to let go of that if I wanted to have a better life. And that's the whole issue. We have to make these decisions for ourselves if we want to have a better life, and we can't expect somebody else to do it for us. We're the ones that have to do it. It's like me with the cigarettes. If I really want to quit smoking, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to make up my mind and do it. Well, I figure if I can get off all those drugs, I can get off of cigarettes, right? And that's the whole issue. It's a matter of, it's the last thing that I haven't let go of, you know what I mean? And so, I have to decide how important it is for me, health-wise, to let go of those. Even if I can't afford them, it doesn't really matter. It's a matter of health-wise. I mean, I can breathe a whole lot better when I'm not smoking, and I feel so much better when I'm not smoking. But this is my little security blanket, see? And so I need to replace that with something a little bit more healthy, right? So that's the thing. So we have to help ourselves, you know what I mean? We really can't expect everybody to do this stuff for us. They really can't. We have to do this for us. We have to get proper exercise. We have to get proper sleep. We have to take care of ourselves, right? Nobody else can do this for us, We may not have been shown how to do it as children, but we can learn ourselves as adults by looking around at some good examples and reaching out for some help sometimes, to get through this stuff and to learn how to take care of ourselves, which is what I'm doing. And I mean, it took me a long, long time to, really to work to get to where I am today. And I keep thinking, I want to keep going. I would like to be healthier. I'd like to be, more whole, And I'm glad to say the only drug I use is a legal one, and that's cigarettes. And I don't really drink, so that's not a problem. But there's these things I need to do. I need to get more exercise. I need to get more sleep. I need to take better care of myself. You know what I mean? And so that I can't expect somebody else to do that for me. So we have to do that ourselves, right? And it's important that we do. We have to look out for ourselves, And if we weren't shown how, we need to find somebody who can help us to work through this stuff, right? Another issue is for people growing up in dysfunctional homes is that their acting out as adolescents may have interfered with their education, and their emotional tension may have interfered with their ability to concentrate and to study, limiting their job prospects and confusion, which affected their school performance. And that's a huge issue for people, I mean, so many people who grow up in dysfunctional homes or, that they have issues with, school. I know that I did. I'm just looking at some of the awesome comments in the chat room here. Sorry about that, everybody. I got off on a tangent there, and I didn't even see the comments here in the chat room. There's some really good comments here, and they said that Bill Murray says it's not unusual for someone who wants to be clean and sober to need to change their friends, the places they frequent, etc. Yeah, that's right. We have to. I could no longer hang around with those people because I knew, that there'd be no way that I could not be around the drugs and to say no and to still hang around with them, even with violence and the craziness that was going on, and try to get myself, clean and drug free, right? And so that's the thing we do have. And it was sad because they knew why I was doing it, and they were happy for me. Like, they all told me, we're glad that you can do this. Good for you, because we all grew up in the same type of homes. We were all abused, and they knew what I was doing. They knew that I was trying to save my life. Sadly enough, many of those people are dead. Most of my friends, one of them was killed at a drug deal gone bad in his driveway. He was shot down, and he was a heavy-duty drug user. Another one, two of my other best friends disappeared off the map. It's just horrific. One was a crackhead, and the other one was having just so many issues. A lot of my friends are their lives were severely affected by drug use, and these were all kids that I grew up with in my neighborhood who were all abused children as well. So it was harsh to see that and I wrote a book called La Vida Juvies. And if anybody wants to get a copy of that, the proceeds are going to dream catchers for abused children. And juvies, for short for juvenile, La Vida Juvies was our name. The cops used to call us the La Vida Juvies because they were always being called over to our street, and we sort of got a name for ourselves. But it was all pretty, it was all pretty minor stuff compared to what most people would think the stuff that we were involved in. We were all good kids, just growing up in a pretty bad neighborhood, and we were all good kids with really not really wanting to hurt people, but we were up to no good, and we were being hurt ourselves and really not being shown a good example of how to conduct ourselves and how to live our lives and how to get ourselves, how to get ourselves some help. We were all teenagers. None of us were being encouraged to not use drugs and to not get in trouble with the law and to not, we were all being abused, most of my friends, right? It's absolutely horrific what this does to children. So I did write a book called La Vida Juvies and didn't use their real names or anything, but I just wanted to point out, one summer with my friends and what we went through and what we were going through, and all of us were doing during this one summer, sort of the last summer before we all really started a lot of heavy duty drug use at that point. So sort of the last summer where we sort of felt like we were still not innocent, because we weren't, but we were still young enough to sort of feel like we were still kids, And so I hope everybody will pick up a copy of that. It's a book that's geared for teens, and hopefully will help teens to, to get some help if they're being used, and to reach out to somebody if they're not being, treated properly in their home and they're being abused in any way, that they would reach out and get some help. If their friends are being abused, that they would try to get some help for them, and if they're using drugs and whatnot. So. That book is available at lulu.com. You can find it at Sheeran Potter Books at lulu.com. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and different places like that. And it's available for download if anybody wants to grab it. We kept the price extremely low because it's not about making money. The proceeds are going to dream catchers for abused children, but it's about, we wanted people to be able to get a hold of the book, and especially young people who may not have a whole lot of money to spend on a book, so we just kept the price really low. So hopefully people will check that out. That's my story. It's 100% truth, and both of my stories, A Life of Death and Redemption, are both my stories, and they're both available, like I said, at Lulu and Sheeran Potter Books and whatnot. So, but yeah, I just it's quite sad what happens to people, and I know so many people, just watching people in my own life suffer through this stuff, and so my brothers, as far as the issue of people who have grown up in dysfunctional homes may not do well in school, may have interfered with their education, and they may not have been able to concentrate in school and whatnot. My brothers dropped out of school. As a matter of fact, I'm the only one that graduated high school in my family out of 7 siblings, and my sister would have graduated, but she missed a school, and then she didn't go back, and she missed a class, and they wouldn't give her her diploma, her high school diploma. So she would have had to make it up with a summer school class, which she didn't do, so she didn't get her diploma. But she would have graduated otherwise. So me and my sister would have been the only 2 out of the whole family that graduated high school, right? My brothers were allowed to drop out. They were using drugs, and they dropped out, almost all of them in the 10th grade, and just hanging around the house, getting high, getting busted by the cops, But that's the type of lifestyle that we lived, and this is how I grew up, right? So I know myself, I had a lot of problems in school, especially I didn't do well in school until about the 10th grade, 11th grade. I finally started to apply myself, but and it was a miracle I graduated, actually. But many people have their whole lives, because of this dysfunction and abuse, their whole lives living in this, right? Didn't have the opportunities, and couldn't see the opportunities. Maybe the opportunities are there, but possibly because of the abuse and the dysfunction, we don't realize that, hey, I can apply myself. I can have a better life. I can try to get a better education. I can help myself, and it's because if you don't have any good examples, it's hard to think outside the box. You know what I mean? So we'll pick this back up tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I had a lot of people here this morning. Thanks a lot, Bill Murray. I appreciate that, Bill. That I was on the show yesterday, and I had a great time, and it was just awesome to speak with you and Jessica. And I just wish you all the best. I hope to be able to hang out in your chat room as well. And as now that I see that the time sort of works, I'll be able to be there at least half the show. So it's wonderful. So thanks a lot, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. I'll be back on tonight on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And I think I have a couple of co-hosts with me, at least one. So hope they're volunteers with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And so, yeah, I hope everybody can make that. If you can be there, that'd be great. It's 9 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is really quite late for most people. And Bill Murray says, often it's very difficult to get family members to change, which is frustrating, but the good news is there are millions of others who need to know they can lead sane, happy lives, and these are folks more likely to be able to hear us to list, you know. So, yeah, that's right. We don't have to let the abuse that we suffered, the dysfunction we suffered, destroy our lives. And that's the big thing that happened to me 4 years ago, was that I realized that's what I was doing. I was allowing the abuse to destroy me, and I was allowing this negative programming that I had been shown as a child to continue on into my adult life. And I 4 years ago realized it, and I thought, man, I really need to, if I want to have a good life, I'm going to have to, it's up to me. I'm going to have to change this. I don't have to allow this to destroy me, right? So that's my big message. You hang in there and make sure that you get some help, whatever help it is. You know, you reach out to somebody. And if you don't trust counselors or therapists, you know, talk to a friend or a trustworthy friend, right? Somebody you know who's trustworthy, and or you know, get into group support, whatever it is. But make sure that you do get some help if you feel like you can't cope, right? And if you feel like you just don't know what you're going to do next, where to go next, you know. And maybe there's nobody even around to talk to, then you call a crisis line. But you do something, you stick around, and you do not let this abuse destroy your life. We certainly deserve so much better, and, you know, we ultimately have to be the ones in charge of getting that better life, right? Can't expect somebody else to do it for us because we can't, right? So take care, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.